Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And I must say the signs for a consensual debate are not particularly favourable since the two selected amendments and indeed the Liberal one that was not simply delete the whole of the government's motion. So let me just redress that apparent breakdown of consensus by saying I think I can probably, on a personal basis, no idea what the government's view is, welcome the first 4 paragraphs of the Labour amendment, which reflect multiple views and in particular calls for legalisation of online ballots for trade unions. I think that, unless I'm missing something, sounds a perfectly reasonable thing to be asking for. But I think the thing that's very much at the core of my take on the debate is the Tories' absolutely egregious attitude to democratic mandate. This is a party, of course, that continues to support the anti-democratic, non-democratic, undismissible House of Lords that constitutes the majority of the UK's legislators, and which, on a mandate of 37% of the electorate who voted a few weeks ago, want to impose a very, very substantially higher requirement on trade unionists. Now, note, I said trade unionists, not trade unions. And that was quite deliberate, because I think what the Tories are really about is weakening the position of individuals in our society, in particular people whose relative lack of power mean they choose to collectively work together to nudge the balance just a little bit in their favour through membership of trade unions. Now, I've long heard the Tories are champions of individualism, but I have to say the current plans absolutely give the lie to that and reinforce my long-term view that the Tories are the party of big business to whom they are absolutely in thrall. They are no more champions of individual citizens whom they wish to remove the human rights championed by previous generations of their party, like Winston Churchill, than Napoleon was an intimate friend of Wellington 150 years ago. Now, for many of us, a substantial part of our constituency work is about care, and in recent times in particular about carers. As our population ages and more live with multiple concurrent disabilities, conditions and ailments, that's not perhaps surprising. The Tory motion refers to 2 million private sector jobs that have been created. But of course, they're not necessarily new jobs. A lot of them have simply been a transfer from the private sector. They're not new jobs to the extent of 20 million. And of course, what that means is you move from jobs in a position where they gave priority to public benefit. They're now in the private sector, where priority has to be given to the owner's interests for businesses. And that's very rarely improved the conditions of the individuals who've been affected by these moves. And in particular for carers, the commercialisation of carer services has created jobs where the relationship between employed and employer is wholly out of balance. Now, in Aberdeenshire, we may be comparatively lucky. I understand that 11 out of the 13 companies providing carer services are living wage employers. But of course, there are other difficulties. In particular, not paying staff who travel between care appointments is actually very commonplace across Scotland. And in a rural area like Aberdeenshire, actually the council area with the highest proportion of people living... Yes, I will, John Finney.
John Finney.
Thank you, President Officer. I'm grateful for the member taking intervention. The statutory obligation, of course, rests with the local authority. It's them that's got responsibility for them. It's them that's outsourcing that to the private sector and, by default, condoning that.
Stewart Stevenson.
I certainly intend to seek to persuade my colleagues in Aberdeenshire Council, now they've taken over the running of it from the Tories, that there may be a different way forward. But, of course, we will be locked into existing contracts, and I know there are difficulties there. But I think the member's right, there are opportunities there. But in particular in Aberdeenshire, I just make the point, it is the most rural area in mainland Scotland. More of the population live in the rural setting in Aberdeenshire. So for carers who are travelling from appointment to appointment, not being paid a bigger proportion of their day, it's a particular issue. Now, there are many reasons why we need new powers over these issues. This is but one of them. I'm sure others will emerge in the debate. The majority of us here, I suspect, could make common cause on how we might exercise the new powers, if not unanimously. I suspect the Tories will be elsewhere. Fair work is an awful lot easier to support if we actually have the powers to do it. Now, looking again, as has been mentioned, at access to the legal system to get rights for employees. Making it more expensive, making it impossibly expensive for those on lower wages is just part of a Tory agenda, absolutely unambiguously clear, to remove people who most need the protection of legal system from the opportunity to gain that. The debate is about protecting employee rights. We've had various references to trade unions. We've had references to borders. Well, I can't help noticing that the Labour leadership contenders went to Dublin to speak to trade unionists because we have a trade union that works across borders. Borders are only borders for and barriers against the effective delivery of policy if we choose to make them. Collaboration is the way forward. I hope we can build some consensus, and by pointing to the first half of the Labour motion today, I hope that that has done so. Perhaps at some future date, I'll come forward and say it's time we helped low-level bank employees who've been so damaged by the actions, irresponsible actions, of a tiny number of highly paid, very senior bankers. Presiding Officer.